don't be surprised when it doesn't go well, and it's your fault.
That's right.
Leadership is a complete exercise in the mirror, not the window. You
Yeah.
want to move with urgency all the time, but Ed Milet has a concept called blissful dissatisfaction, and that's dissatisfaction. So you want to be urgent, you want to be sort of dissatisfied with where you're at, which always keeps you hunting for more, but you want to be blissful while you're there and enjoy the process and really appreciate each step of the way because
Greg Sheldon here, your host of Metal, Steel, Manufacturing, and Business Pro podcast, where you learn everything about the metals and manufacturing industry that make your modern day life possible. All right, we're recording. Jesse, I'm glad to have you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
You're welcome. So we can ask last time we connected, I was really impressed. Let me just turn off my notifications here. Apologies. Oh dear. Yeah, so I was really impressed with you and how you put your business together all around core values in a business. And before we jump into that, I wanted to kind of get a background about you. How old are you?
27.
27, right? So you're 10, 11 years younger than me. And I'm just really amazed at your insight and your wisdom on how you've structured your business based around core values and like how you hire people and how you keep everybody not in line, but on the same page. And you really encourage authorship through that. So I want to talk about that, but how did you get to running a business at 27? And, congratulations on that. Like, that's hard to do, right? So I just wanted to hear, your story. And so listeners can get an understanding from a 27-year-old, what it's like, how business starts, and, how you see the world of manufacturing, metals and welding and fabrication, all that stuff. Cause that's what you guys do, right? So.
Yeah, no, 100%. I appreciate the congrats. It's kind of like surreal, I guess, to sort of be in the shoes that I'm in now, with a team of over 50 people and,
Yeah.
sort of like everything that I wanted to put together since high school, right? So, that brings me back to like, who was I? Who am I? I've just always been the kid that was like the the entrepreneurial spirited kind of guy that I had multiple businesses when I was younger. I used to buff boats and used to clean boats. My dad owned a boat repair shop, so
Yeah.
I grew up around his business and my like entire family, not just my dad, but like all my uncles had their own businesses too. And they were all about the same size. They were like an owner operator type size. And so I grew up just like fully immersed in the working hard and working a lot culture that you kind of get when you grow up in a small family business and surrounded by more of them.
Yeah.
Um, and so I guess it was just kind of like in my blood. But something happened when I went into high school that I can't really even put words to. I can just kind of tell you what happened. I don't know why it happened. It's just kind of how I'm wired. I got into welding, like my dad first got me into it when I was probably 12. Like he showed me how to MIG weld, and there's like boat trailers and stuff that need to be fixed. So we did some of that, but that was like on a smaller scale. Well, then I got into high school, and I got along like super well with our high school tech ed teacher. He's like the best dude ever. I still talk to him today. Shout out Mr. Lee. He's still as awesome as he was back in the day. Still helps people as much as he did, for us kids back then.
Yeah.
And him doing what he did and going about it how he did made tech ed like cool for me. I had an interest in welding, but he, for me, as well as a bunch of other people, that I was in school with at that time, he was like the catalyst to sort of drive you to be better. and kind of gave you the environment and the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And so like I joined Skills USA, which he was, the leader of, being the tech ed teacher. We
Yeah.
went all over. The best that I did there was like third overall at state, but I had the number one TIG welding test scores like every year that I did it, like all 3 years. Um, so I was able to do pretty well there in the welding, and then got a welding job and went pretty quickly through like the life cycle of a typical, as the E-Myth calls it, a technical minded person, right? So a technician, they do the job and then they're like, oh, I'm going to start a business, right? And so I got good at it in school. I went and did the job for like a couple years, and then I was like, all right, now I want to do this on my own. And in the beginning, it was very craft centered, as it usually is for a technician type. But then I did that for a while and got to a point where I realized that, one, nobody ever did anything like really significant by themselves. So at that point, if I was going to bring other people in, I knew that it had to be about more than just me, about more than just welding, right? So then it was like a complete 180 shift to the mindset where I have now, where it's really all about these core values and stuff that like build a team. So all that happened, from the time that, like I said, even before high school till I started, running a business on my own at like 21 or 22, something like that.
Yeah.
And so then about 3 years ago, we got into the point where we started really building a team and stuff, and that's where all these core values and everything came in. But it all came from this place of like, at first, I just wanted to really do welding, and then I wanted to do welding big, and then I wanted to like share that with everybody else. And all those windows of time, for me, I move through pretty quick, right? Because I see the path where I want to go, and I do everything that I can to make it happen. And I'll turn off whatever switches that I have to keep that one running full bore. And that's kind of what we did, to get to the point where we're at. Where, like I said, like 3 years ago, we had like 5 people, and now we have like 50.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, man.
um, it's been a heck of a ride, but that entrepreneurial spirit has never left me. It has certainly evolved and grown as time has, elapsed here.
Yeah, man. Well, I think that's part of the key to your success, man, is the ability to evolve and change with the times, with what's needed in your evolution, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's awesome. Where did you, so you read was the E-Myth, like how many books is that? I mean, is that the first book you read, or like what, is there any books that stand out in your mind? Obviously that one does, but where did it start for going down that journey of the road, the learning from others? Just right
Yeah.
from the
So
beginning, or
yeah, I think for me, once I got out of high school, um, not long after that, I got like hooked, like hook, line, and sinker on personal development. So like, you
yeah,
know, I still follow a lot of the same people that I did back then. Like Jocko Wilnick, Andy Frisella, Ed Milet. I'm part of Andy and Ed's business group called the Arte Syndicate. I've met those guys in person. Um, and like, you get immersed in that culture, and I've stuck with that, and it just every day makes you want to be better. It makes you want to be a better business owner. It makes you want to be a better person. It makes you want to be a better dad. It makes, mom, whatever. Um and so like, I just am addicted to progress at this point. And
yeah, man.
I always say every day I want to do three things. I want to give love, get love, and make progress. If I do that every day, then I'm happy.
I
um
love that. That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, man.
And so like, yeah, for me, once I got started, you know, then the train kept rolling. But like, there's a saying that you and I talked about before this interview, actually, and it's, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I've been ingesting the same information, this whole time, really, because it's all out there, like, and it's free. So
It's free.
nobody really has any excuse not to go get this. You
A
just have to
hundred
really
percent.
better. But I've been at 21, everything that I listened to resonated a certain way. And then 2 years later, at 23, I heard a lot of the same information because I consume hours and hours and hours of this. And I mean, like, probably at this point, well over thousands of hours of, personal development content, books, podcasts, whatever. So, like, you hear the things that you need to progress at a 21-year-old level, and that, gets you to, like I said, a couple years later, now you're hearing you're picking out different things from a lot of the same content really, but you're picking out different things that you need to hear at that time to now carry you into the next step. And so for me, I fully believe, as you alluded to before, the reason that I've been able to really condense timeframes is kind of how I refer to that, and go from just doing it myself to having a small team to having a team of 50, because that's kind of like always my benchmark. It's not really like the success that I make for myself, the success that I make for others. Really, that's how I
Yep.
judge how I'm doing. Um, you know that that continuous learning and evolving is what condense those time frames, because otherwise you just kind of can fall into a lull of doing the same things the same way, and to continue to do that and expect different results is literally the definition of insanity,
That's
right? So
exactly where I was thinking. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
so you have to accept the fact that you need to look through a different lens on a very regular basis. And the guys that really move quickly through life, they look at it on like a quarterly basis. They need like a perspective shift.
Hmm.
They want to do that for themselves like once a quarter. So it's like usually getting yourself out of your comfort zone, in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And that can kind of do like a hard reset and make you look at stuff different. And that's what I've been doing. You know, I'm really happy with like the results that have got me there. I want to be better every day, like I said. But if I found that after a while, when I really understood myself, then I can kind of get pretty granular on like what I need out of every day to keep feeling like I'm progressing and stuff. And you
Hmm.
know, um, I think as long as I'm doing that and I feel good about that, I really don't feel a need to like keep up with the Joneses or whatever. Like, I know my path, I'm on that, and then I'm good. And I think everybody that's around me takes a lot from that, because it's not this like facade of stuff that you're trying to like fake or be somebody you're not, or
Yeah.
have a company that you're not. It's running your own play, doing your own thing, and just from top down being better every day. And as long as me and everybody around me continues to do that, I mean, what can stop you really?
Yeah, exactly. And you answered my question. I wonder what that journey's been like, because you would have an effect on people around you, right? And um how's that gone? Like, how have people interacted with you when it comes to, do they look to you as a leader, clearly? How has that been? Do they come to you and say, hey, how do I do this thing? And like, what's that process like? Has it been rewarding for you?
Yeah, I think that everybody can be a leader. I think that some people have a natural propensity to be one. And I was sort of just born with that. Like, I wanted to have responsibility. I wanted to help people. And I think really, if you just pair those things together, like at its core, that's what it's all about. It's not about a certain title on the door.
Yeah.
Um, it's about what people see when they look at you, what title they assign to you. The title that you give yourself or whatever doesn't mean anything. It's what other people perceive when they look at you, or do they look at you at all, right?
Yeah.
um and when push comes to shove, you'll know, if you're the guy or you're the girl, because people are going to look in your direction if they see you like that. They could give a shit less what's on the door.
Yeah.
um so like that.
So is that where the core values come from? Is
Yes.
It is. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that has a lot to do with it. Just to answer your question and that you kind of posed before, like that whole journey of like being a leader has, evolved with especially like the size of the team and stuff. So how people perceive you, the things that you have to navigate, the circumstances, situations, that is an evolving thing, especially as your company is growing, right? How that it affects how people treat you in public and everything. That's like a very long discussion. That could be a whole podcast.
Yeah.
Um, but for us, everything revolves around core values. And um, when we got to, I want to say it was like five, somewhere between 5 and 10 people. I started out with a core group of really, really excellent people, and like I come from a small town of a couple thousand people, and like obviously I'm biased because that's where I grew up, but
Yeah.
I don't think that you get any higher quality people in like a small, condensed little geographic region of the world than in Kewanee, Wisconsin, personally. Like I said, I'm biased.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. That's good
You know,
though, man.
yeah. And so we started out with this core group of people, and we collectively decided to come up with these core values. And how we sort of worded it was like, who do we want to be and who do we want to surround ourselves with? How do we want those people to be? So we tried to take those things, and then as a group of, about 5 people, sat down, put them on paper, and they're in play till today. They're not like just, a list of stuff that's on the wall that everybody sort of walks by and never gives a second thought to.
Hmm.
And as a matter of fact, as of right now, they're not even on the wall. We talk about them in the meetings that we have every week.
Good.
Um, but it's a lot more about how you live than like some fancy poster that you paid some money to have made, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. So weekly meetings, that's what one of the things you do, right? And what do you guys talk about in your meetings?
So we go over a combination of tactical information, and we cover one core value per week, and then we do the pledge.
What's the pledge, if you don't mind me asking?
That's the Pledge of Allegiance, America, baby.
Oh, okay. Okay, awesome. I love it. I love it.
Yep.
I love it. That's
Yeah,
good,
be
man.
proud. Be proud is one of our core values, and
Yeah,
each core value is listed with like a quick synopsis and then an explanation. And part of that is be proud to be in manufacturing, be proud to be an American,
I love
and
that. Yeah.
that's what I believe.
Okay. I thought you'd written your own or something, but kind of you have in a way, right? And
Yeah,
that's not something you hear all that often. At least I haven't. But well, and I want to touch on something here where, because you're 11 years younger than myself, and I'm curious to get a finger on the pulse of like what's happening out there with your age group and younger, like Gen Z, or are you Gen Z? Is that what you would consider yourself?
I honestly,
I
I
don't
don't.
know either. I mean, I don't want to classify people,
Yeah,
but I'm just curious, what's the feeling around our industry with younger people? And I'm biased because obviously I come from the industry, right? Like I want people to be in it. That's part of why we're doing this podcast, is to get excitement about it. And I'm wondering what your perspective is on that. Like, are people coming into it, and what do we need to address to get more into it?
yeah. So just to answer your question, I never really like looked specifically at the dates. I call myself a millennial, and the reason that I
Oh,
call
okay.
myself a millennial is per the following. Um, I I think that there's got to be some truth to like every generation goes through and sort of like poo poos on the prior generation and says, we had it harder, da da da. And
Right.
I'm not saying that that's not true. However, you know, I think that there is good with each generation. You
Yep.
can't
Me
like
too.
you can't just blanket poo poo on everybody. That's not going
No,
to do anybody any good.
exactly.
So the reason that I just say I'm a millennial is because I wanna pair myself with the group that is definitely poo pooed on a lot, um, and sort of like say, hey, I'm a guy that works like a lot.
Yeah.
I'm building a business. I'm all about capitalism, like all these things that are sort of seemingly, in a lot of people's opinion, disappearing with that generation. And so I want to be the one to say, like, I don't really know about that. I'm going to challenge that. I think that there is there's a very there's one big factor that millennials sort of get all of their personal nuances from, like, at their core. They really just want to be a part of something. And so, like, everything that people observe about them really spins off of that. And I think that, because the millennials in a lot of cases are pretty young yet, if you're just talking about that generation, I don't even know that they understand that about themselves exactly. But from what I've seen from, you know dealing with so many people and hiring people, trying to provide them with careers and such, I can tell you for a fact that it's true. They absolutely want to feel part of something, and they're definitely not as money driven as the prior generation. And I've got people across the board. We hire people that have came right out of tech school, right out of high school, and we've got people that are well into their 50s.
Hmm.
Um, and I can just you can take any sampling of those people, and those will be trends that you'll notice.
Okay.
So, like, that being said, when you deal with people, you have to come from a standpoint of complete personalization towards what makes them tick. So, like, you can't just go into it all lazy and just blanket things and address the 50-year-old person like the 20-year-old person and expect that to work, right?
Hmm.
So you have to speak to what makes them tick, and what makes a person tick in their 50s versus in their 20s. The 50s person, you speak to a lot to security and things like that. That's what's really important to them. So
Hmm.
that's what they're going to take away from basically every conversation you're going to have. They're going to be hunting out that information. The person in their 20s, they want to feel a part of something, and they want, like, time to go do whatever they want. So, like, they want to be a part of something. They don't really care a whole lot about, like, what they get paid as compared to how much vacation they have. And that's just what it is. So, like, I choose to just deal with what I've observed unbiased, like, and
Hmm.
roll with that.
Hmm.
And, you know, like, when I started in business, I didn't expect to be required to get a psychology degree off the grid. But that is essentially what you wind up doing if you really want to do it well. And like I said, nobody ever did anything big by themselves. So
Yeah.
I wanted to do something big. So that means that I need to be able to work with people, and I just kind of work backwards from there. The six human needs is something that is really, really important to really being able to speak to someone, because in every conversation, everybody is just looking to take some sort of a meaning away for themselves.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to approach the conversation from, the standpoint of understanding what's important to them, and knowing that they're going to be trying to pull that information out of the conversation. So you
Yeah.
have to be mindful of what makes them tick and what meaning they're going to take away from the conversation. And if you do that every single time you talk to someone, you're going to find yourself really able to communicate well if you go in understanding those things. So I think that's why I've been able to pretty simply delineate between the two, and I just work with what it is.
Yeah,
You
man.
know, I'm not going to try to change that. I'm gonna
Work with
say,
it.
hey, this group of people has awesome things about them. This group of people has awesome things about them,
Yeah.
and how can we facilitate fulfillment of both of those groups of people's um, needs, wants, desires through our company.
That's right. Yeah, because you're not going to change them. It's about working with them. It's about, taking the value they bring and using that, right? Not using it, but you know what I mean, right?
Well,
Um,
you kind of do that, because,
but I
like,
mean, it's not using in the sense of like you're using it in a bad way. You're taking that information and using it to help them, right? Not using, like using is a bad word, right? That's all I'm saying. But
yeah,
you're
like, everybody has at least two gifts. I learned this from Ed Milet. Um,
yeah.
And you do want to get good as a leader of get good at recognizing what that is, and then using, I'm just going to use your word because I don't think that there's anything wrong in saying that. Like, you want to use what you know about them and what they do well, what they know about themselves, and put them in the right spot so they can take off.
Yeah,
You know,
as long as it's a positive outcome, right? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you're just trying to, as a leader, you're trying to put the right butts in the right seats so they can really
Yeah.
like use the potential that they have. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So did you ever go work for anybody before doing your own thing?
Yeah. Again, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't for very long. It was like a couple combined years. I
Yeah.
spent most of my time that I've been working, working for my dad.
Yeah.
Uh, and after that, I had a job for at a couple different places for a couple years, but
It's
definitely a
just,
lot less than a lot of people.
well, that's okay. That's not why I asked. I asked because I'm curious if you took some things away from those experiences that you were like, "Ah, I don't want to do that. I don't like that." Right.
Mostly
Um,
that. Yeah,
that's what it was.
yeah, mostly.
Okay, cool. Is there anything in particular?
Uh, I just I just really wanted to make a place that didn't suck to work at. I'm not saying that the places that I worked at did suck to work at, but I had a certain I've never had a problem taking the good, the bad, and everything in between from whatever the situation is,
Yeah.
and then building my own vision from that. All of my life experiences have sort of, fed the vision that my brain auto populates, really, because I just notice things, and I do want this, I don't want that, and all that
Yeah.
stuff adds up to ultimately where I want to be, what I want to do, who I want to be. Um,
Yeah.
and so I did take a lot from really everything that I've done, and that created um, my vision, which then I tried to just find people that aligned with, you know, and then we created the core values from that, and then that can scale from there.
That's really cool, man. It's kind of like Ed talks about this, the reticular activator. Like once you know some things, you see things. It's not like sometimes you don't even know how you make the connections. It's just like it comes from the fact that I've been paying attention to this stuff that's positive, right? And just
Mhm.
making those connections really I don't know. I find I'll be talking on the phone and somebody asks me something and then I'll just come out with something. It's like, oh, how did I know that? Right. It's and I think it's because I've been steeped in all this education around business and all these things from guys like Ed Milet, right? So um I'm thinking you're gonna have to advise me, man, at some point because I don't know, like when it comes to the younger generation, I've been so focused on the baby boomers because that's who raised me through my career and that's kind of my target market, but I don't know enough about the younger generations or younger people. And I've got to learn a lot more because part of this has kind of evolved over time, that we have to start paying attention to that, because there's a whole generation that's retiring, but there's also we got to fill those spots, right? It's also kind of forcing us into some automation, but that's not the best way, right? But I also believe that um, automation can also create a place where people can add more value instead of doing repetitive tasks, So do you, have you gone in that direction at all in your company or is everything, what's the process like with you guys? Is it all custom or are you doing any like repeat stuff?
We are like a very, very intricate, custom part oriented place.
Yeah.
And so our focus has been historically vertically integrating what we have. And so that's like bringing finishing in house, just doing a lot of different things in house that we used to sub out.
Hmm.
And so all of because of the parts that we do are such, low volume and so intricate, everything that we do is high touch,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
Sort of fell into my lap. Like that just is the customer base that really stuck.
Mhm, mhm.
And I guess in hindsight, I always kind of thought this was kind of neat because, we could do umpteen different variations of work, but what we wound up doing was this work that requires this very immense like amount of training and attention to detail and all these things that really make up the type of people that I wanted to work around.
Wow, awesome,
And
man.
so like I didn't really seek out this customer base. It just was something that we had success in and then scaled from there. But
Yeah.
like looking back at it now, it worked out really great for me because like I said, when this whole deal started, like I wanted to work with a big team. I wanted to do really cool stuff, and I wanted to work with skilled people, good people, and if we were just making the same thing every day, I could make like the same amount of parts that we have with a couple people and some robots or whatever. But that's completely the opposite of rewarding in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that every company has to find a mixture of those two things, right? It's life's never either black, it's never white, it's always somewhere down the middle. So we are doing things to really be better with software, hardware, and everything in between. um, but the people make up the core of everything. Like the people are what thinks of all those things to implement and what actually does the implementing and things like that. So there never won't be a place for humans. And I for me, I can tell you for a fact that's where all the reward is for me, because there's really like three phases of leadership, and one is just to lead yourself and just live a good solid life. Then it's to lead others, and then it's to build more leaders. So
Hmm.
your leaders build leaders, and that third phase is where we're really trying to blossom out into, because that's when you can have a real impact. Like that's when your spider web gets really big all of a sudden. You
Hmm.
touch a lot of people without even having to do all of it yourself and make the world a better place. That's what I'm trying to do. So we grow a company, we grow a bunch of good leaders, they grow a bunch of good leaders, and I can check out one day and just be like, we can honestly say we made the world a better place.
Yeah.
Like, perfect.
Cool, man. I love that. I love that. Great answer.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So what is your biggest struggle today in business?
Hmm. Um, I think our biggest, well, not I think, I have to actually pause and think about that for a second, which is kind of funny because I really don't dwell on struggles very much. Like,
Good.
you know, I just don't live there. And so I'm just doing a little self-reflection now. That's kind of funny,
No,
but
well,
I can,
that,
I can, I can say the biggest challenge is dealing with outside vendors and things like that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that's where the bulk of our problems is, like across the board, whether it's quality, on time, those two things are
Hmm.
basically the entirety of what makes up um, the the analytics that we work with, outside of customer experience, obviously, which feeds off of those two. But
Hmm.
um, that's been our big thing, which going back to the vertical integration and bringing in software, hardware, that kind of all works together. But again, I just really try to see things to where they are on their own from an unbiased opinion and just deal with that. I say, okay, I'm seeing this. I know that we're headed here. Where do we have to work backwards to bridge the gap of where we want to go and where things are currently at? Like that's all I'm doing. And then I put in a play to get there. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't dwell on like what's hard and what's, whatever. I just fix it.
I love it, man. So you kind of like put the pieces together and the people
Yep.
together, and that's where we're going. Let's get
Yep.
there. You've given you the core values that works here, and we need to go in that direction. That's awesome. Um, what do you do any, I'm curious about revenue generators. Like, are you doing any online type stuff? Do you, if you have, is there any, have you found any success in that? Um,
Yeah, we get a lot of work through online portals. That's a pretty common thing nowadays, you know.
okay. Well, I meant more like social media. Do you do any stuff on there? And have you seen any results? I don't really. I mean, I don't find it. I think it's more of a, I don't know. It's like a branding thing. It's not really like a revenue generator, it seems. But that could be just my lack of understanding in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on what you do, you know, like
Yeah.
because we have this niche of like really complex, fancy parts that, could come from any B2B relationship really.
Yeah.
They're, I said online portals before, but that includes social media, all that stuff.
Oh, okay.
Um, you know, it all it all can add revenue. You know, you mentioned social media being a way to sort of like build a brand. And, ultimately, a brand is really the delta between what a customer will pay for a commodity versus your specific product. So, like, you can make the same thing, but if you've got the name behind it and whatever is important to the customer and what that means to them, they will pay extra for it. So, you know, maybe it's safe to say that social or any other online experience is just as equally important to not only revenue but profit, because that delta between the two is really bottom line. That's what that translates to, right? So
Yeah, man.
um, that is that is really important to us. We have a full-time marketing guy. He puts daily posts and stories up on social media and just shows what life is like at JR Metalworks, what we make as far as parts go for what we can show. A lot of stuff we make we can't show, but
Hmm.
um, that all really feeds into the brand that is JR, and I can tell you for sure, you're talking to me about getting employees before, building a team, especially the young people. That's where they're looking, you know.
Well, and I wanted to kind of expand on that because I feel that's exactly right. They are looking there, and the sentiment has been built over the past 5, 10 years of transparency. People want to see behind the curtain. They want to see what's happening, right? And you can do that easier than ever with like TikTok Live or Instagram Live. And I'm just, is that the direction for the young people that we need to go to show them what's happening? I love that you're doing that, that you're showing behind the scenes what's going on, because there's this long form podcast stuff that we're doing right now, right? And, I don't edit anything because I don't want it to come across as disingenuous or whatever the word is, right? Um, and I think that's also what people are looking for when they're looking for a job. So yeah, I think it's good to do is do the live videos and stuff. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
Yeah, I mean, we just try to like show cool little things about what it's like to work with our team every day. Like
yeah,
that's something that we very intentionally go about doing. Like we recently did a chili cook-off. We made a golden ladle for the winter and stuff like
nice.
that. And some people would write that off as a complete waste of time, but when you talk about speaking to a crowd of people that just want to feel part of a team and care about that immensely more than like how however much they make in a day, they want to be a part of something, they want to change the world, make the world a better place. um, if you just write all that stuff off, especially without even giving it a chance, you're completely writing yourself out of the chance to really watch a complete demographic of people be able to excel within your organization. If you just say, nah, we ain't doing that, well, you probably should have gave it a chance before you just stomped it out, because I can say from absolute like 100% personal experience, that's the stuff that really makes our company different, fun, all that stuff. It's
Yeah.
got soul. I always say we have soul. Like
Yeah.
there's a reason that people show up. I just read one of our people's reviews last Friday, and there's a section at the end where it says, "What can we do to make our company a better place to work? What can we do to make JR Metalworks a better place to work?" He says, "Nothing. I love my job." Like
Perfect.
you can't make that up.
No, you
Like,
can't, man.
it's awesome. And he
That,
didn't. A lot of those people don't even know that I read every single one of those reviews.
yeah.
He probably thought that it was just a supervisor that was going to see that. I read every single one.
Yes, you
And
do.
that's the other part of that is you have to care, right?
Of
That's one of
course. Of
but
course you do. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I want to talk to people, right? That's my style. I want to go talk to the guys on the floor and stuff. Do you do that a lot? Do you go down and talk to them, get to know them, like what's going on in their life and that sort of stuff?
yeah, and I'm in a sort of interesting spot all of a sudden here as of recently because we used to have all of our operations go on at one place. And now we have a building just up the hill from there, and ultimately I made the decision to give my office at the original building to the guy that has been with since day one. He's on track to be the CFO right now. He's the operations manager, and he's like been the right hand man since day one. Everybody knows that's the case, and he's earned it.
Yeah.
Um, but it was a tough decision for me, right? Because we got the bulk of everybody down here, and just a small handful of people up at this new building. But I wanted to make sure that the guy that's running the new building feels supported for one,
Mm-hmm.
because it happened pretty quick, and also number two, we were tight on room, and like we had to shuffle some people around. So that's been an interesting transition here. I'm in the middle of a bunch of projects, so I do have to sort of isolate myself a little bit to really punch those projects out. But I do still try to make a concerted effort to go back on, a very close to daily basis, walk around, say hi to everybody. I still know everybody's names. If we walk through the shop, I can tell you a little bit about everybody that's been there. If they're brand new, just give me a couple weeks and I'll find it out. And I think that one, that's the kind of person that I want to be. So I always want to continue that as much as, humanly possible. And whatever whatever aspects of that change, I want to make sure the people that are sort of taking over right behind me are still keeping that intact, because that's really important to me. That's the kind of company we want to have as we scale. That's the kind of people we want to be. I don't I want to be very careful never to lose um that touch, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you juggle because there's checks and balances and then there's authorship, right? And it sounds like you're doing both, more authorship than checks and balances. How do you juggle between those without one becoming more uh invasive than the other? Because you don't want too many checks and balances without the authorship, right? I mean, or do you have checks and balances? I'm wondering how that works with you guys.
Can you explain what you mean by that? That must be some
So
Canadian speak.
So that's okay. Authorship. You know what authorship is, right? So you're giving somebody the ability to make the decisions on their own
Sure.
based
Okay.
on your core values, right?
Yeah. So I explain that like a bowling alley, right? When you start bowling, you got bumpers. And so my job as a leader is one, to put the right butts in seats, and then two, put up guardrails so that you're setting them up for success and you're not, just you can never just like the easy answer when you hire somebody is just to like throw them all of your stuff that's been usually accumulating for a while by that point and just be like, here, figure it out. That's never, ever, ever the right way to go. So, like my dad always said, since I was just a little kid, and both of my parents, as a matter of fact, the right thing is always the hard thing. And so the hard thing in that case is you bring somebody new in, and there's a slow transition period if you do it right. That's just always the case. The easy way will just never be the best. And that's what it is. So here again, I take that. I accept it for what it is, and then I work off of that. So like, I try to put as much on paper as I can. I'm actually in the process of finalizing a big release of information and very specific daily, weekly, monthly duties for all of our supervisors, all of our project oriented people, so that everybody is given very specific expectations to live up to so that they know what success looks like and they can work backwards from there to help themselves and the company get there, right? Um, so if you just, you know, if you take the time to do that stuff, you really care about their success.
Yeah.
That's really all there is to it. But you just can never take the easy way out and just be like, okay, here you go, figure it out. Um, that's that's not that's not productive for anybody, and you're setting them up to fail most likely because
Yeah.
you're going to give them you know umpteen amounts of responsibility with no sort of expectations nor um, advice to really see it through well, and
Hmm.
then don't be surprised when it doesn't go well and it's your fault.
That's right.
Leadership is a complete exercise in the mirror, not the window.
Yeah. Yeah. Great way to put it. Thank you for that. So I have one more question, but I would just wanted to touch on how do people find you? Because they're going to want to do business with you. Where are you? What's the business name? You have a website and all that stuff.
Yeah. So the business is jr-metalworks.com. Most of the stuff that I do is on Insta, or otherwise just my name on Facebook. On Insta, it's Jesse_Kleiman, and JR Metalworks on Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff.
Okay, man. I'll put a link to all of that in the description. One last question. If you were yourself, at 20, what advice would you give to yourself to move faster, or not even faster, in a more valuable direction? I mean, you're doing great, man. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is, how would you guide yourself?
Hmm. If I was 20 again, I would really try to get myself to understand that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be at that point. And, you know, you want to move with urgency all the time. But Ed Milet has a concept called blissful dissatisfaction, and that's dissatisfaction. So you want to be urgent, you want to be sort of dissatisfied with where you're at, which always keeps you hunting for more. But you want to be blissful while you're there and enjoy the process and really appreciate each step of the way, because to be honest with you, I moved so fast and took so little time to really absorb any sort of step of the way that you kind of lose sight of, one, why you're doing it, two, how far you've come, three, how cool it is to have gotten through all those things. And so, like, I would have taken more pictures. For one, I would have taken more time to just kind of sit there and reflect a little bit. And I would still be as urgent as I am. I think that, the way that I've tried to set my life up was I kind of came out of the gate with a plan to really, really work my ass off for a sprint for a couple years. I didn't know enough to have any sort of an expectation of how long I was going to go. I just knew that I really didn't have anything to lose um, by putting everything on the line and just going for it. And I was going to work, which I did. For 3 years, I worked 7 days a week, 14 hours a day. There was not a day that I wasn't there. And like at once I got to a certain point, which, to be honest with you, again, I wasn't really even that clear on. I think clarity is probably one of those things that I would try to teach myself too, but it comes with experience as well.
Yeah.
Um, you know, like, I just knew that I was going to work really, really hard. And then I get to a point where I would sort of reevaluate and then transition from there. And, to be honest with you, I've recently got there, but I ran so hard in the beginning that until just like now, there was a lot of internal struggle that was making it a little less fun than it should have been, because, you want that, you want to look back at that time and be like, wow, what me and everybody around me did was pretty freaking cool.
Mm.
You don't want to be caught up in every little thing that goes wrong or whatever and let it ruin the experience.
Yeah, man.
So I think I don't even know exactly how I would get that across, because like I said, a lot of it comes with experience, but that's what I
Yeah.
would want myself to know and be better at.
All right, man. That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, it's a hard question because I mean it's impossible, but that's good. That's a good answer. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, man. Let's stay in touch.
Yes, sir. We'll make the world a better place one day at a time. That's what we got to do.
Absolutely we are.
Right on.
I like to say one bolt at a time. That's my thing.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Have a good one, man.
All right, you too. Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Greg Sheldon here, your host of Metal, Steel, Manufacturing, and Business Pro podcast, where you learn everything about the metals and manufacturing industry that make your modern day life possible.